Absolutely, absolutely. Important conversation that we're about to have. Drinking and driving, drunk driving during the festive
Mm-hmm.
season, and how experts are weighing in and saying perhaps to change the culture around drinking and driving, we should perhaps look at testing people on the regular, perhaps on the daily. Do you think this is something that could help in curbing drunk driving in the festive seasons? Could help. That's why I say could help.
Could help. I mean, those holding cells are going to be very under pressure. I can tell you that. Because let me tell you something, especially when it comes to, I'm based in Johannesburg,
Yeah,
and for my entire adult life,
yeah.
what I have seen is that people in Johannesburg love to drink
Yes.
at any time of the day.
Yep.
There's always an excuse to drink. Ah, it's just a mimosa. At 6 o'clock in the morning, somebody's got a mimosa in hand. In the afternoon, there's a drink in hand. At night, there's 6 bottles of wine on the table, right? So we love to drink. People here love to drink. And the issue is that not that they love to drink, is that we have problems of doing it responsibly. I think that is
Yeah.
the problem. Where do we draw the line? We obviously have to get on the road. The roads are very busy. You've got to pick up children
Yep.
and that sort of thing, and you've got to share the road with other individuals. So
Absolutely.
being a responsible drinker is paramount. At this time. So roadblocks, festive season, that's the big conversation right now.
Absolutely, because every December, Mzansi, that's South Africa, braces for the same dance. Roadblocks, breathalyzers, and those festive season crackdowns that remind us not to drink and drive. But the moment January arrives and the flashing blue lights disappear, old habits creep right back. Yet alcohol and our roads don't take a holiday. And relying on once a year enforcement is like trying to fix a leaking bucket with a plaster. Now, a new wave of thinking is emerging. Make alcohol testing part of everyday life. At workplaces, communities, and on the roads. So safety isn't seasonal. It's cultural, and with consistent checks, real behavior change suddenly becomes possible, not just hopeful. Joining us on the line is Rhys Evans, Managing Director at ALCO-Safe, to unpack how routine testing could finally shift South Africa from festive crackdowns to year-round responsibility. Rhys, thank you so much for your time. Welcome back to The Upside. Is this the way forward? Testing people on the regular, on the daily, could this curb drunk driving on the road, especially during this festive season?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show. Yes, definitely. It would definitely curb alcohol problems on the road in the festive season and throughout the year. And I think that's the goal. We want to curb it throughout the whole year, not just during the festive season. So why we're saying that is because we've actually seen that happen in real life in all the companies that we work with, where you have companies that do consistent testing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
The amount of positive tests and the amount of accidents, the amount of people that report for work under the influence of alcohol drops dramatically if you start to do regular testing, because people know they're going to be tested. So the choice is quite simple then.
Yeah, indeed it is, because then you just get anxious about what the possibilities are. But let's talk patterns, Rhys. What patterns in drunk drivings do authorities see throughout the year outside of this time of the year, the holiday season?
Yeah, so I mean, we all know. I mean, everyone's got friends. We all live in South Africa. We know that during the holiday season, there is a spike in the amount of drink driving related cases that's on the road. But is that because of the amount of people increasing on the road? Is it because more people are drinking and driving at that time, or is it because there's greater testing and greater visibility? So the statistics show that there's a higher number of people testing positive during that time. But if we were testing consistently year round, would we still see that trend, or would we see that we've got a consistently bad drinking and driving behavior in the country? It's just going unnoticed in other times of the year.
Testing for alcohol every single day, daily, routinely, at work, on the roads. Could this change the culture of drinking and driving in South Africa year round? 20 minutes after 1 p.m. Central African time, we'll continue our conversation Rhys Evans, Managing Director at ALCO-Safe, right after this.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
The Upside with Teboholi Kuleni and Matseko Mosito, bringing Africa's voices to the world. On Channel Africa, the African perspective.
21 minutes after 1 p.m. Central African Time. This is indeed The Upside, your gateway to the good life on Channel Africa, the African perspective, with me, Tebohole Kuleni, and welcome her back, Matseko Mosito. We're coming to you live from the Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. Join us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa on Facebook and YouTube, and at Channel Africa 1 on TikTok. Why routine and everyday testing of alcohol is so important, and how this can change the culture around drinking and driving in South Africa. We continue our conversation with Rhys Evans, Managing Director at ALCO-Safe. Rhys, let's talk about some of the biggest barriers preventing routine testing from becoming a standard. Talk to us about cost, capacity, resources, and what could hinder us from getting there.
Yeah, so I caught a little bit of your conversation earlier about having full prison cells, holding cells. So that's definitely a concern, the capacity to actually deal with all the people that would be found positive on the road. But actually, the main constraints for this is the amount of officers that we have. We just don't have enough officers on the road to deal with all the problems that we have, drunk driving being one of those problems. So you would have a personnel limitation on that. Equipment in the past was one of those things where there was a limiting factor, because in the past, breathalyzers always had to use a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So every single time you tested a person, you'd need a new mouthpiece for each test. So if you're trying to test, say 1 million people in a year, and at a cost of R1.50 for one of those mouthpieces, that cost then adds up 1.5 million.
Yeah.
But nowadays, the police can use a high-speed breathalyzer on the roadside. So basically you have a charging cost or a battery cost, because those instruments, you don't have physical contact with them. You blow into them from about 5 centimeters away. So they hold the instrument up in front of you. You just give a like that, and then it will give you basically an indication that you're above or below the limit. So you screen drivers rather than seeing the exact level. And then if you find a driver that's over the limit, then you do your proper procedural test, where you have a mouthpiece and you do a confirmation test to see what that level is. So that consumable cost is not really a problem anymore. Training of officers would definitely be a problem. We need to have more trained officers on the road. We deal with police quite a lot, and we actually see that it's a very strange thing, but people believe that because a policeman is a policeman, he should automatically know how a breathalyzer works and how alcohol works and how the two work together, and they don't. They require training. So it's the time that's allocated to those people to allocate to do the training. So it's training on the use of the instruments so that they get competent on the use of the instruments, but also on the legality, like the procedures surrounding those instruments. So if you've got properly trained individuals and you've got the latest equipment, obviously it's a budget to train those people, because someone has to train them, and there's a cost to that. It's the purchasing of new equipment, so you would need budget to get that equipment to test everyone on a daily basis, and then the personnel constraints. So the number of people that you got, those would be your 3 main factors that would sort of hinder this type of rollout.
Right. There are obviously tiers to this, you mentioned the fact that we don't have enough, law enforcement on the road that conduct this thoroughly and properly. But also, the public need to know their rights when they're on the roads and they're being tested. The issue of equipment is another one, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the role that reliable equipment and proper training play in being able to build trust in alcohol testing programs. And I think particularly when it comes to the equipment side of things.
Yeah, definitely. You've raised a very good point there. So when you are going to roll out a large scale testing, and what we've seen when we work with companies and roll out testing within a company for the first time, is that there's a huge pushback against it from people that have very little understanding or not given the proper awareness around what's sort of happening. So if you go to a company, I'm using companies as an example because it's kind of a small case study that you can actually get quite quick feedback on, rather than trying to do something, across a full country where there is all these constraints that we've just spoken about. So if you look at a very big company where they might have 5,000 employees and they've never tested people for alcohol, they have to have a policy. So in South Africa, we've got the National Road Traffic Act. So in a company, you would have a substance abuse policy, for instance. So the first place to start is to actually communicate that policy. You would have to communicate that Road Traffic Act, and specifically with regards to drink driving, to the people. So to the public that's going to be using the roadway. So don't expect them to understand it or to read it just because it's there. So you need to explain those laws to people quickly, effectively, so that they know what is acceptable. You can't. It's very difficult to hold a law against someone if they don't know the law is there or what that law is. So they need to understand what the drink driving limits are, how easily you're able to get to that drink driving limit. So for instance, in South Africa, we actually have 2 drink driving limits, and most people don't know that. We have a private driver's limit. That's a person like me and you driving to work, driving to fetch kids from school, driving home from a restaurant. Our limit is 0.24 milligrams per liter. And for a person of around 80 kilograms, that's around 330 ml beers would get you approximately to that level. Right? It depends on a few other factors, but approximately. Then we also have a PDP driving limit, so a private or professional driver's limit, and that's even lower. So that's only 0.1 milligram per liter. And for a person of around 80 kilograms, that's only half of a beer would get you to that limit already. So knowing your limit is a good place on where to start. How long does it take for that alcohol to get out of the body? So quite a lot of time people will drink, they might drink quite heavily in the evening and then get up in the morning and drive, but they drank till 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't realize that it actually takes time for that alcohol to be broken down by the liver. Around 1 drink per hour is only removed. So if you drink, 15 drinks, it takes 15 hours for those 15 drinks to be broken down. So you're still under the influence when you wake up in the morning and you're driving, and you can cause accidents on the road when you do that. So those are just 2 of the things which people should know about. Of course, they're right with regards to equipment. So breathalyzers are electronic scientific instruments. They do need calibration. And depending on the instrument that's being used, they should be calibrated at least every 6 months or once per year if it's a screening device. So screening device minimum once per year, confirmation tests minimum every 6 months. The calibration certificate should actually be readily available, and that shouldn't be something that a police officer has to hide. They should have record of all their calibrations to prove that their instruments are reading accurately. They should be able to show you your reading to prove that you're actually over the limit. So quite a lot of time officers might test a person and actually say, well, you're over the limit, but the person doesn't know what the limit is. Perhaps the officer is unsure of whether he's testing you at the private driver's limit or the professional driver's limit. So all of these things create a lot of confusion and hesitation in the public mind. But if you have very clear understanding of what the rules are, what equipment can be used, who can actually test you, then there isn't a fear around it. Then you've got clear rules that everyone knows that they're playing by. So definitely communicating that Road Traffic Act and the testing procedures is going to give us a lot better buy-in from the public.
Rhys, what an invaluable conversation this has been. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Very quickly, where can we find you and ALCO-Safe on the socials or website?
So we are on Facebook and LinkedIn, ALCO-Safe, Pty Limited. And then you can also find us on our website, which is alcosafe.co.za.
Amazing. Rhys Evans, Managing Director at ALCO-Safe, advocating for daily testing of alcohol so that we can reduce the number of drunk driving cases on the roads, not just in South Africa, but I think throughout Africa this needs to be a standardized policy. 30 minutes after 1 p.m. Central African time. Let's get